Our government has essentially taken over the Guatemalan government. Now, the United States government is the most powerful government in the world, and it certainly uses its power throughout the world. But here, it's not just using its power. The United States government is using its power to lead a radical collectivist takeover of the state of Guatemala.
Americans don't know anything about it. But here in the U.S., ignored by Congress, by news media, and therefore by the public, this extraordinary intervention is shaping our lives as well.
Does the Democratic Party, does your campaign take Latino voters seriously, or are you taking them for granted that they will automatically vote Democrat?
Well, I take them seriously because I've had the great privilege of working for many years with Latino leaders, activists, business men and women.
Muy difíciles, que yo vi la muerte muy de cerca, de verdad.
Those were difficult moments. Really, I saw death very near. Hidden, freezing, and under the rain, I felt I was dying. I was sure my security guard had been killed, while the security guard thought that the driver and I had been killed in the car.
Y él pensando también que el piloto y yo nos habíamos quedado muertos dentro del vehículo.
The Justice Ministry ordered the prosecutor handling my case to get it dismissed. In essence, the ministry was saying that no crime had been committed. I asked myself, what's going on with our country? Aren't we supposed to be living under the rule of law? I did my own investigation and spoke with others who know about these things. I came to the conclusion that Claudia Paz y Paz had been able to keep her position, exercising the office of Attorney General, not in strict compliance with the law, but in line with ideological bias. And how could she do that? Because she had the backing of Hillary Clinton.
In July 2012, I received an invitation from Ambassador Arnold Chacon, who was then Ambassador of the United States in Guatemala. A very interesting part of the conversation, probably the most important part, was when the ambassador told me that he had direct access to Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, due to the relationship between Clinton and Claudia Paz y Paz in Guatemala. He was one of the few ambassadors who did not have to wait to talk to her, and it was precisely due to that relationship with Claudia Paz y Paz.
In September of 2012, Armando Latorre and I met with the Ambassador of the United States to Guatemala, Arnold Chacon. Armando Latorre is a fellow American and is the Dean of Graduate Social Sciences at Francisco Marroquin University. So we had information that we thought that our countrymen, and especially our government, should have regarding the actions of Claudia Paz y Paz. We dealt with three basic subjects. The most important and the first one was the situation of Hilda Aguilar. And on August 22nd, she was the victim of an armed attack. The ministry gave her no support, and in fact, the Attorney General persecuted her prosecutor, who somebody had tried to assassinate. We knew Mrs. Clinton was very close to Attorney General Paz y Paz, but what we didn't know is what she knew. How much did she know? That was the reason we were there. We wanted to tell our government this information, and I told the ambassador, you have all the ability to investigate. Everything I'm telling you is public. Please go and check and make sure that you're doing the right thing.
Attorney General Dr. Claudia Paz y Paz is proof that Guatemala has public servants who are honest, capable, and able to keep their word. Her term as Attorney General has raised up Guatemala's name throughout the world, with numerous and well-deserved recognitions for contributing to improvements in the rule of law. It is a privilege for my government to count on a partner like Dr. Paz y Paz.
Al corpulento, al de bigotes, al alto, sí lo he visto en medios de comunicación y creo que es presidente de la unidad campesina denominada el Coup, el cual también sé que se llama Daniel Pascual. Fueron a visitar a Byron Tello y a proponerle que le daban 50,000 quetzales a cambio de eliminar físicamente a la fiscal Hilda Aguilar. Yo he sabido que estas personas en ese momento, cuando llegaron a las rejas, dijeron también que ellos tenían mucho poder dentro del gobierno y que tenían el dinero necesario y que querían llegar hasta las últimas instancias y que querían matar a la licenciada Hilda.
They told me that Mrs. Hillary Clinton was on the line, and well, I took the call. After greeting me and chatting me up, the usual protocol, she told me that for her it was very important that Mrs. Claudia Paz, who was the Attorney General at the time, should continue in that post. I told her, look, that doesn't depend on me. A nominating committee is going through the process. 6 names will come to me, and out of those names, I have to decide who will be the next Attorney General. But the call was a way of putting pressure on me. That's how I took it.
The Department of State, under orders of Hillary Clinton, gave instructions to the ambassador for the dismissal of Conrado Reyes as Attorney General and the naming of Claudia Paz y Paz. I personally heard from one of the magistrates, and in the presence of another 2 witnesses, about the conversation in which Ambassador McFarland and Mr. Castresana, the head of the Anti-Impunity Commission called CICIG, told the magistrates to dismiss Conrado Reyes because, supposedly, he was linked to criminal organizations. That magistrate told me the story right to my face. He said he asked them for proof and told them he could not decide without proof. And they told him, look, this is public knowledge. We have the proof, and we are going to send it to you. But you need to take action now, because this is a very serious matter. 6 years later, that magistrate is still waiting to see the proof, because of course, no such thing existed.
At our meeting, the only subject we discussed was extending the mandate of the CICIG. Vice President Biden told me that, for the U.S., there was no alternative to the CICIG. He said it was important for our relations, important for the Alliance for Prosperity, and important for the struggles they were waging. Then he was interviewed by the press, whom he told, the CICIG stays, period.
Our defendant was never at the scene of the crime, but he was sentenced by this court precisely for the murder of this woman and her 2 daughters, when the same Foundation of Forensic Anthropology states in a written report that 18 people in all were murdered by the guerrilla in that place. However, when we requested that the presiding judge take the report into consideration, she said that she could not accept it because only the military were on trial, not the guerrilla, and that the guerrilla were not being judged because they never went to that place.
You mean that the court accepted as evidence the report by the Foundation as far as the rape was concerned, but not the same document where it concerned the guerrilla having killed the woman?
The document that clearly establishes the participation of the rebels in the murder of 18 peasants and Mrs. Dominga and her daughters was not accepted. However, our defendant, because of that situation, was sentenced to 90 years, 30 years for each person murdered.
Some members of Congress who were there told me the ambassador put it this way: for us, the upcoming vote on the High Court magistrate is extremely important. I've asked for your help. Here's the embassy's view. Option A is Gloria Porras. Option B is Gloria Porras. And option C is Gloria Porras.
A magistrate of the highest court is accused, with documented proof, of committing acts of corruption. But this is not the only irony. The other irony is that the strategies that the current president used were of a juggernaut. Not only did he forbid us to speak against it, but he also did not allow us to present our reasons for voting the way we did, because he manipulated the microphone and used the backing of the United States Embassy so that she would be voted in. I know because current magistrates have told me that they had used bully tactics, just as the current president of Congress has used them, saying that what I want you to do and what I want you to vote for has the backing of the United States of America through the ambassador in Guatemala. And there is an indirect insinuation that if you do not follow the instructions, you will be subject to an investigation.
This intervention by the United States has empowered local groups that promote chaos and violence. Those destructive groups are hurting people who are only trying to improve their own lives. They are actually inciting many people to flee from their homes and go north to seek opportunities in the United States. This regressive U.S. policy has also frustrated the efforts of enterprises that would like to improve conditions and create economic development.
Squatters came in and took over our lands, burnt down our sugarcane, caused all sorts of havoc with the local population. We even had rapes, we had holdups, we had beatings, we had all this sort of thing. And this was caused by the Comité de Unidad Campesina, which the acronym is Coup. And so the leader of the Coup is the fellow by the name Daniel Pascual. We had to abandon the farms, and we got a court order to evict these people, which was carried out, except we had interference from the then Attorney General, Claudia Paz y Paz. And she phoned her fiscal attorneys that were in the closest town, La Tinta, and threatened them that if they were to carry out the order, they would not be able to work in the Guatemalan government again for the rest of their lives.
They were forced to participate in protests that apparently support the Coup. I say apparently because they were forced. If they went to support the protest, they were paid 100 quetzales. If they did not support the protests, then they had to pay 100 quetzales to the Coup. If they did not pay, they had to do community service to these villages. If they did not do community service, they were whipped and threatened. And they were told their children would not be received in the schools. All this for refusing to support those organizations which are called, quote-unquote, human rights groups.
As expected, Claudia Paz y Paz began to issue instructions memos to the prosecutors, assistants in the prosecutor's office, and public ministry personnel in regard to land invasions, which the penal code calls a flagrant crime, one that demands immediate eviction. Instead, she instructed them to tell the judges that they must give the squatters a reasonable time to prepare for eviction. This instruction is a gross violation of the law. In criminal law, it is called malfeasance. That is a crime.
There is a company, Hidrosalá. Along comes Hidrosalá, offering to give the people medicine, but the leaders say no, and the company does not give it. The leaders say, we don't want anything from that company. The company says, we're going to have projects. The leaders say, no, we don't want any projects. The company says, we are going to supply drinking water to the communities because there is drinking water. All you have to do is set up the pipes and go to the spring. But the leaders say no, nothing from that company. The leaders make things worse when they are at their worst. Well, they are at their worst. There is nothing here. The company offers work for the campesinos, help for the communities, help to build the schools, fix the roads, all kinds of things. But the leaders don't want the company.
They told us that if Delfino, my husband, does not participate with us, if Elvia does not participate with us, we will burn them. That is their threat. If something happens to us, there is no support. And if we ask them, the government is not guilty party, because the government and the police offered to protect us, but the people join in and say, we are going to burn the police. Every year, they make proclamations. Every year, they force people to sign, and people sign by force. And when the people sign, they take signatures, and they stand and say that this is signed by the people. Here, police does not come in. Nothing comes in. Here, we don't need anything. People can't come in because they threaten to burn them, to kill them, and they can say it because they have done it before.
I was ordered to carry heavy stones. I did it because I was threatened. They said that if I didn't keep carrying the stones, they were going to punish me more harshly. They said they were going to take me from my house and set me on fire with gasoline. They kept me in a clandestine prison for hours at a time. They grabbed my wife, pulled her out of the house, and threw her into the prison where they had put me. They also grabbed my kid, whose name is Axel Ronaldo, and put him into the prison with me. Since those days, I don't sleep soundly. I don't feel secure in my own home. I keep thinking of the threats they made against me. I'm worried that they will take me out of my house and set me on fire.
Different areas throughout the country, the ambassador had expressed a grave concern that the money that Guatemalans paid in taxes to their government was not reaching some of these rural areas, and they were without basic services. And I wrote him an email, and I said, I congratulate you on that. You're absolutely right. We agree with it. But their main problem is not that. Their main problem is they're not free. They live under the oppressive, arbitrary rule of armed groups operating outside the law. And we said that we would be happy to brief him. Now we're 14 months later? I'm still waiting to hear from him. Well, that's the reason that I'm producing this mini documentary. It's exactly the reason that our government has essentially taken over the Guatemalan government. Now, the United States government is the most powerful government in the world, and it certainly uses its power throughout the world. But here, it's not just using its power. The United States government is using its power to lead a radical collectivist takeover of the state of Guatemala. And I find that to be horrifying. I was educated in the United States between the mid-50s and the early 70s, and the principles that I was brought up with, that I was educated with, I see all of them being violated here. And I'm interested in getting this information in front of the American public.